Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, it is a mock draft Monday edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. On today's show, we are going to go over 6 different mock drafts and see who some of these national pundits have the Tennessee Titans taking in the first round of the 2022 draft. And what I find most interesting is every single person has the Titans taking a different player. So very excited to start this mock draft Monday edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. Let's get it.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Titans fans, it is a mock draft Monday edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We are going to be doing these mock draft Mondays every single Monday until we get to the NFL draft. I'm going to be looking at mock drafts from national pundits like we are today. I'm going to be doing my own 7-round mock drafts for the Titans. I'm going to be taking a look at some of the mock drafts that you guys send me on Twitter as well. So make sure that you guys are in a mock draft mood every single Monday. And that's just a part of the off-season content that I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be reviewing the 2021 season that was. I'm also going to be looking forward, doing a ton of free agency conversation. Last year, I did 186 draft profiles on different prospects. Going to continue that and look to pump up those numbers this year. So a ton of all-season content. Remember, I'm going to be putting out daily, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content, not only during the season, but all year long. So make sure that you never miss an episode of the Locked On Titans podcast by subscribing on whatever platform you do stream. You're going to find the Locked On Titans podcast everywhere and always free. If you want to see the show on video, make sure that you subscribe to the Locked On Titans YouTube channel. Smash that notification bell when you do so you know when all of my content goes live. If you're watching on YouTube right now, throw me a thumbs up. I definitely do appreciate that. Check me out on Twitter at TicTacTitans. Check out the show Facebook page at Locked On Titans Pod. I know that's a lot of housekeeping, but a lot of new people jumping on with the off-season content. Want to make sure everybody knows exactly what's going on. Of course, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, been a Tennessee Titans fanatic for over 20 years on this show. We put a big emphasis on the X's and O's, talk a lot about the tape, the film. We will continue that through the off-season with player profiles and different things that I want to point out to you guys. But of course, we always cover the news and the notes and the scuttlebutt coming out of Nashville. But today, it is a mock draft Monday. So let's dive in. Our first mock draft Monday of the offseason. We will begin with someone who could be considered the top dog when it comes to draft analysis in the NFL at this moment in time. Of course, you got ESPN's Mel Kiper, who's kind of the godfather, but Daniel Jeremiah from the NFL Network really does great work, and he's kind of the most respected guy out there with draft coverage. So what did he have to say about the Tennessee Titans first round selection, number 26? Well, he had the Tennessee Titans taking Quay Walker, the linebacker out of Georgia. Now, I think that is a pick that I wouldn't necessarily go with David Long taking a leap forward with Jayon Brown. I think there's a good chance Jayon could be back on another 1-year deal after not having a great season and dealing with injuries. After another Georgia linebacker, Monty Rice, having some good moments as a rookie before he got injured. I don't think the Titans would prioritize linebacker, and I don't think you're going to get a talented enough linebacker in the first round at pick 26 to make that worth it. But what did Daniel Jeremiah have to say about the pick? He said this, quote, Walker gets lost in the discussion of top defensive prospects because he was surrounded by so many studs on the Georgia D. If Walker had played on a less talented college team, we'd be talking about him as a potential top 15 pick. Listed by UGA at 6'4", 240 pounds, the man can fly. Rashaan Evans is a free agent after this season. Walker would slot right into the starting lineup. Again, it's not insane, but I just don't think that's the route that John Robinson would go. I think he learned his lesson with Rashaan Evans. You do not pick a stand-up linebacker in the first round unless it's just a home run guy. And that's not what Quay Walker is. So I can't say I agree with this pick from Daniel Jeremiah. The next mock draft we're going to go over comes from his coworker and his podcast mate, Bucky Brooks from the NFL Network. And, well, one more thing I want to say about Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft before we get into Bucky Brooks. Johan Dotson, the slot wide receiver from Penn State, Tyler Lindenbaum, the center from Iowa, Malik Willis, the quarterback from Liberty, Jamison Williams, the wide receiver from Alabama, were all on the board when the Titans took Quay Walker. So I don't get that. Makes it even more confusing why that pick was made. I would take any of those four players over Walker at number 26. But as for Bucky Brooks's mock draft, a pick I do agree with, and a guy that I would be perfectly fine with the Tennessee Titans selecting in the first round, and that's Jahan Dotson, the wide receiver from Penn State. And this is what Brooks had to say about the pick. Quote, upgrading the wide receiver core is a priority, seeing how the passing game struggled at times this season. Dotson is a big play specialist with sticky hands and outstanding route running skills. He did play all the way until his senior year, so that production is there that John Robinson likes to see. I agree with this pick. The Titans have to upgrade the Chester Rogers role within their offense. That has to be a number one priority. Now, a guy like DeMarvin Leal from Texas A&M, the defensive lineman, I think he could be groomed to take over that Danico Autry spot, play next to Jeffrey Simmons. He was on the board. I don't think that would be insane, but I like the pick. I think it's the right pick. Jahan Dotson from Penn State, wide receiver. Love that pick from Bucky Brooks. But that's just two of the 6 mock drafts that we're going to be going over on this Mock Draft Monday. So before we get into some more mock drafts, do want to tell you guys a little bit about our sponsor, Built Bar, the best tasting protein bars in the galaxy. It's a new year. That means New Year's resolutions. And if yours is about getting fit and eating healthier, you have to include Built Bars in your plan. You get the best of both worlds here. It's obviously a healthy protein bar, but it tastes like a candy bar, maybe even better than some candy bars, in my opinion. It's not going to be chalky, waxy, tough to choke down, all crumbly. They're smooth and tasty, covered in 100% real chocolate, a ton of delicious flavors. Cookies and cream, salted caramel, and peanut butter brownie are 3 of my favorites, but the ruby chocolate, absolutely delicious. I've been eating a lot of those over the weekend. But remember, the bars are protein bars. They're very healthy as well. Low calorie, low sugar, high protein, high fiber. So make sure that you go to built.com. That's BUILT, built.com. Use the promo code LOCKED15. You'll get 15% off your order. Once again, that's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Titans fans, let's continue this Mock Draft Monday edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We just talked about 2 mock drafts from the NFL Network, Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks. Now we're going to get into some other national options as well. Before we do, just want to thank you guys again for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen every day. And I also want to thank you guys for getting through last week with me. I was very under the weather for the last 3 or 4 days. Had fever, had chills. Luckily, it wasn't COVID. Seemed like just a regular flu, but either way, I was down for the count. And I know that the enthusiasm and the energy that you guys are used to me bringing wasn't necessarily there, but a lot of you guys reached out to me on Twitter and just sent well wishes and things like that. And I definitely do appreciate that. But I'm feeling better. I'm feeling great. Ready to dive into this all season. It's not where we wanted to be right now, and that loss still absolutely stings. But it's time to move on. That's all you can do. Move forward, look to 2022, and the best way to do that with some Mock Draft Monday. So let's keep it going here. We got another mock draft from WalterFootball.com, and he had the Tennessee Titans going with a tight end, Jalen Wydermyer from Texas A&M. And Wydermyer is considered one of the better tight ends in this class. There is some debate. I think he's probably the top guy. And this is what Walter Football had to say about the pick. Quote, Julio Jones is just a temporary player, so the Titans may want to find another weapon in their offense. Their tight end situation isn't very good. Jalen Wydermyer had a big sophomore campaign. He's a big tight end, 6'5", 260, and has terrific receiving ability. End quote there. Now, I agree with that analysis. Julio Jones is in his mid-30s. He's dealing with injuries all the time. He is a temporary player. That is true. He's not a long-term solution. The Titans do need to find another weapon in their offense. I've been saying that my top priority in the draft is pass catcher. I'm not saying wide receiver. I'm not saying tight end. I'm saying pass catcher because the Titans need another option desperately in the pass game outside of Julio and outside of A.J. Brown. And the tight end situation isn't very good. That's very true. So I do like the analysis here and I get it, and I wouldn't be upset at the pick. But rookie tight ends rarely contribute in a major way. Yes, we just saw Kyle Pitts have a great season, but Kyle Pitts was a top 5 pick. He was a unicorn when it comes to draft selections. And while Weidermeyer is a good player, he's not Kyle Pitts. So I like the pick. If the Titans were able to maybe trade number 26, get down to 33, 34, somewhere in there, which I think is exactly what the Titans should be looking to do without having a second round pick due to Julio Jones. You drop down 5, 6, 10 picks, something like that. You pick up another second round pick. I think that's the move for the Titans. But if they stick and pick, I wouldn't be majorly upset about a tight end here if somebody was worth it, and Weidermeyer is probably that guy. Now, here's what I will say. A couple of picks later, Walter Football had Chris Olave going to the Detroit Lions at pick number 31. If Chris Olave from the Ohio State Buckeyes, a wide receiver, is on the board and the Titans don't pick him, I am going to lose my mind on air. If any of those wide receivers from Ohio State, Olave or Wilson, are on the board for the Titans, that has to be the pick. Mail it in, send it in as soon as possible. There would be no excuse for going with a rookie tight end in the first round when you have a guy like Olave or Wilson on the board. So for my money, I would have taken Chris Olave right there at number 26, but I don't think it's insane to want to take a tight end there, and Jalen Weidermeyer is definitely a solid option. So moving forward, we're going to go to a mock draft from CBS, and it comes from Josh Edwards. Going to be taking a look at a lot of his mock drafts throughout this mock draft Monday season and just mock season in general. But with the 26th pick, this has to be the most interesting pick of them all. Edwards has the Titans selecting Malik Willis, quarterback out of Liberty, the junior, 6'1", 215 pounds, good mobility, very talented arm. But anytime you're taking a guy from a lower level college like Liberty, you got to worry about their ability to read complex NFL defenses, their ability to go through their progressions. All those things come with taking a guy who played at a lower level. But here's what Edwards had to say about the Titans taking Willis with the number 26 pick in the first round. Quote, Ryan Tannehill cost the Tennessee Titans its playoff game. And there have been some murmurings for change. Willis would allow the Titans to lean into their identity as a run-heavy team while developing him as a more consistent and decisive passer, end quote. Oh, it hurts. It hurts. Edwards is right, though. Edwards is right. And I really wouldn't be against this. I couldn't be against this at this moment in time. A guy like Willis, a guy like Corral. I'm not really high on Kenny Pickett. I think he has a very low ceiling as a quarterback. But a guy like Willis has all the physical ability and just needs a little bit of nurturing. Now, my thing is, do the Titans have the ability to nurture a quarterback? We haven't seen the Titans nurture a young quarterback since Steve McNair. You know, Ryan Tannehill came in and he played better, but it's not like they nurtured him into being that way. They just put him in a better system for him. So it's not like they made his traits any better or anything like that. He's still terrible with pocket presence. He still is a little slow on his reads. So that would be a little concerning for me, is the Titans the ability to develop a young quarterback. But I mean, right here at pick 26, it's not really something that I could complain about. There's nobody that got picked below in the first round that I was really that interested in for the Titans. All the big wide receivers are off the board. Tyler Lindenbaum, the center that I'm interested in, off the board. Kenyon Green, off the board as an interior offensive lineman. No cornerbacks that really fall down that I would be interested in at that moment in time. So if this is the way the board fell, I don't think this would be a bad pick for the Titans. Go ahead and take Malik Willis, start to develop him and get ready. He could maybe take over for Tannehill if things go really sideways in the second half of the season. He'll definitely be ready for 2023 when Tannehill's contract is basically you're able to get out of his big number, which I think the Titans will do no matter what. Now, from a quarterback perspective, I would be more inclined to wait until 2023, make a big splash on a quarterback in 2023, which I think is a better crop of guys. But if Willis falls all the way to 26 and the Titans stick and pick, I don't really see how that's a bad option. At least take a flyer. At this point, I would pick as many quarterbacks as possible and as many years in a row as possible until I get myself a Josh Allen, a Patrick Mahomes, a Joe Burrow. Until you get that guy, we have learned the harsh truth here. The makeup's off the pig. Until the Titans get an elite quarterback, they're never going to be a serious team. They're never going to be anybody that the rest of the world takes serious. So I would put every resource possible to doing that, no matter what. And if Willis is there at 26, sure, I'm with it. Go ahead and take him and let's see what can happen. From there, we got a couple more mock drafts to go over. Two new players that we haven't heard before, so very interesting conversations to be had. And one of these mock drafts, one of the best players in the draft, in my opinion, takes a huge drop, and the Titans pass on him. I don't think that they would do that. So before we get into that, though, do want to tell you guys a little bit about a free app that anybody who buys gas has to know about. It's called Get Upside. My listeners are earning cash back for every gallon of gas every time they fill up. Just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store or on Google Play right now. Use the promo code TOUCHDOWN for 25 cents per gallon or more on your first fill up, cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump ever again. Get cash back using Get Upside. You download the app for free. Use the promo code TOUCHDOWN for 25 cents per gallon or more on your first tank. Some people who drive a lot get up to $300 a year in cash back. And here's the thing, there's no catch. The cash back gets added right to your account, and you can cash out anytime directly to your bank account, your PayPal, or to an e-gift card like for Amazon or other brands. Download the free Get Upside app. Use the promo code TOUCHDOWN. Get up to 25 cents per gallon cash back on your first tank. That's code TOUCHDOWN on the free Get Upside app. Titans fans, let's cap off this Mock Draft Monday edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We are going to get into the two last mock drafts that we are going to go over today. And like I told you guys, two new players that we haven't discussed. So I love these mock draft Mondays, not only because it allows us to kind of work around what the Titans may do, what positions are on the table, but also what players could be available for the Titans and how they would fit. So I love going over these mock drafts. Again, we're going to do mock draft Monday every single Monday going forward until the NFL draft, barring some kind of crazy mock draft news. Best believe if Todd Downing gets fired next weekend, I'm talking about Todd Downing getting fired on Monday. So obviously, I leave some room for improvisation. Never going to box myself in. I'm going to make sure I'm bringing you guys the best, most important content that we have. But today, Mock Draft Monday. Expect Mock Draft Mondays going forward. Again, we're going to go over the national mock drafts. I'm going to be doing my own 7-round mock drafts that I want to go over with you guys. Some of you guys love sending me your mock drafts that you do. And I think one of these Mondays, I'm just going to go over a couple of fan-made mock drafts and make sure I give you guys some shout out and see what kind of philosophies you guys are using to set up the Titans in the 2022 NFL draft. But also, just want to give you an idea of what's coming the rest of the week. On Tuesday, I am going to do a film review of that Titans loss to the Bengals. No, a little late on that, but wanted to make sure I brought that to you guys because I promised, and I will always deliver on my promise. But also got some Titans news to talk about tomorrow on Tuesday's show. And then the last 3 shows of the week, barring, like I said, big news, please fire Todd Downing. We're going to do a season review. I'm going to go over all 18 games, kind of go through them, go over some of the highlights, relive the roller coaster of a season over the last 3 days of the week. So I hope you guys will enjoy that. And that's kind of what the rest of the week on the Locked On Titans podcast is looking like. I want to thank you guys for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen every day. Make sure you subscribe on whatever platform you do stream. But the last 2 mock drafts that we are going to get into, number one, Comes from Pro Football Network, and it comes from Ian Cummings. And he has the Tennessee Titans going with a J-Rob special. Wide receiver Jameson Williams from Alabama. Now, of course, Jameson Williams tore his ACL in the national championship game. But Cam Akers for the Rams just came back in 5 months from an Achilles tear. Modern medicine is out of control. Science is undefeated. So I think Jameson Williams probably will be able to play in 2022, and that makes me less reserved to take him following an ACL tear. But Cummings talks about that a little bit. Here's what he had to say about the pick. Quote, the Titans have shown they're willing to take gambles on talented prospects with varying questions regarding their stock in round one. In this case, it's not character that mars Jameson Williams' outlook. The Alabama wide receiver is revered for his work ethic. Rather, it's his ACL tear. Teams will weigh it differently, but Williams' tear was clean, and he should be able to make a full recovery. His pure speed would drastically open up Tennessee's passing offense. End quote. Boom! Cummings is right on with this. The Titans need that speed so bad. I can't believe that the Titans ran with Chester Rogers and Nick Westbrook-Akina as their third wide receiver this year. My Lord, man, that just cannot happen again. Improving that Chester Rogers role is the number one need for the Titans this offseason outside of maybe remaking the offensive line. But Jameson Williams would make a ton of sense for the Titans. Again, it is a J-Rob special. Nobody loves taking a risk in the first round on an injury-prone player or a guy coming off a major injury like John Robinson. But Jeffrey Simmons has turned into the second best interior defensive lineman in the NFL. So can't really hate on that. And I still have a lot of faith in Caleb Farley coming back and being a stud for the Titans. So Jameson Williams. Now, talking about Caleb Farley being a stud, I still don't think that you can count on that. And I still think that there is a really good cornerback at 26. You absolutely take that player, which leads me to Derek Stingley Jr. from LSU was available for the Titans in this mock draft. He drops all the way to 27. Now, there are some people who are sliding down Stingley Jr. because of his injury history. The last 2 years, he hasn't really played up to the level that we got from him early in his college career. But my God, the talent is there. And John Robinson doesn't pass up on talented players like that at this moment in time in the draft. So if I'm the Titans and Stingley's on the board, that is a run to the podium pick. Take the most talented player possible, and, the Titans defense will coach him up and get him playing his best football. 2 LSU cornerbacks, I'm in with that. Pair Stingley with Fulton. That would be my selection at that time. But Drake London, the wide receiver from USC, was also on the board. And Tyler Lindenbaum, the center from Iowa, also was still on the board. And boy, I love me some Tyler Lindenbaum. It's not just the first name, guys. Come on. Well, maybe a little bit, but Lindenbaum's awesome. And offensive lineman from Iowa? Titans need replacements? That would just be a perfect pick, in my opinion. So looking out for that as well. The final mock draft that we are going to go over comes from the Draft Network, and it comes from Brian Perez. He has the Tennessee Titans at number 26, taking a player that they haven't taken before, but very similar to the pick that Daniel Jeremiah had for the Titans, and it's one that I don't agree with at all. Perez has the Titans taking Nakobe Dean, the linebacker from Georgia. Now, I like Dean as a player. Dean's an awesome guy, and here's what Perez had to say about the pick. Quote, assuming Dean becomes a better finisher in the NFL, his range and explosive athleticism make him an extremely exciting prospect who fits the mold of what today's top linebackers are made of. He's a 3-down player and a year-one starter. That's great value for a Titans team that could use a player with Dean's skill set on the second level of the defense. Okay. I'm not 100% against what he's saying, but you just don't take that linebacker in the first round. I would rather roll with Monty Rice next to David Long, bring Jayon Brown back on a 1-year deal to be your passing down linebacker along with David Long. I would rather go that route than take Nakobe Dean. I just don't think that stand-up linebacker is the move in the first round. I think the NFL has moved past that. If you got an absolute freak, an absolute stud like a Devin White was for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that you're going to take in the top 10, well, sure, that makes sense, but Nakobe Dean isn't the talent level that would justify taking a linebacker in the first round, in my opinion. So I got to say, I disagree with the pick, and it makes me want to rip my hair out when you realize that Garrett Wilson, wide receiver from Ohio State, was on the board and went to the Lions at 31. Makes no sense at all. The Titans would take Garrett Wilson. Do not make this overly complicated. Let Wilson run out of the slot and totally change this Tennessee Titans offense in a dynamic way. That would be my move. Sorry, Brian Perez. Love your work. Love what you're doing here, but hate that pick for the Titans. I'm not here for a linebacker. Not here for running back. I'm not here for a safety. Pretty much any other position other than that, I can at least understand. But I'm looking at Garrett Wilson with the way the board fell in this one. I don't see how the Titans could pass that up at number 26. But that's going to do it for our first mock draft Monday of the 2022 NFL offseason. Very excited to dive into this offseason content with you guys. Starting to kind of move past that game, although it definitely still hurts, but we're going to dive into the pain a little bit tomorrow, go over what I saw on tape from the Titans, and then we'll review the season once and for all at the end of the week. But that's going to do it for me today, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.